BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap will get you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.com.
Welcome to Rice TVX. On today's Rice Report, I am joined by Mark Meckler. He is the president of Convention of States and the Citizens for Self-Governance. He was the acting interim CEO for Parler between February and May of 2021. I recently went out to a Convention of States event in Statesville, North Carolina, and I got to catch up with Mark in person and do this in-person interview. And I also recorded his speech at the event. If you guys want to check out that speech, it's going to be exclusive content available on Odysee, and I will have links down below. But before we get into it, if this just happens to be your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with my videos as they come out. Also, due to all the recent censorship, make sure you subscribe to my backup channel, Rice TVX2, the sequel. And I've also recently deleted more than half of my videos on my main YouTube channel, which means you can find 100% of my content plus exclusive videos over on Odysee and LBRY. If you haven't already, be sure to visit ricetvx.com and sign up for the mailing list so that you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. You can also find all my social media links as well as merchandise that is coming soon. If you'd like to support the channel directly, consider joining my Patreon, where I have 3 different levels of membership, or if you'd like to send a direct contribution or tip, I have my Cash App information, PayPal, and my CoinTree link for cryptocurrency addresses listed below in the video description. Take advantage of my partnership with Money Metals Exchange. Get your free half ounce of silver. All you need to do is be a first-time buyer, visit moneymetals.com, purchase a minimum of $100, and use the promo code RICE. You get that free half ounce of silver, and it's another way to support the channel. I will include links down below in the video description for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything that we talk about on today's show. I am joined by Mr. Mark Meckler. He is the president of Convention of States and the Citizens for Self-Governance. He is also one of the co-founders of the Tea Party Patriots. And between the months of February and May of 2021, he was the interim CEO of Parler. Wikipedia says he's a political activist and an attorney. And I came out to Statesville, North Carolina to check out this event that he's going to be speaking at for Convention of States. A lot of you people who watch my channel know that I've been studying law and looking into a lot of ideas with history of the United States and ways that we, the people, can take the power back. And one of the things that I've been researching is Convention of States, which is ultimately, and I'll let Mark explain it in his words, but trying to utilize the Constitution under Article 5 and call for a Convention of States, which would take 34 states to be able to call that convention, and it would take 38 states to ratify any amendments. And it would be all limited to the federal government, limiting the federal government's power, also limiting term limits for congressmen and things to that effect. So I'll let Mark explain a little bit more about what Convention of States is, why you're here in North Carolina.
You just nailed it. Like I'm taking you on the road with me. That was excellent. That is a pretty good summary. So the Convention of States mechanism is in the Constitution. It's in Article 5 of the Constitution. There are 2 clauses in Article 5. They both talk about how we can amend the Constitution. The first clause is how we've always done it. The first 27 amendments came through there. It says whenever 2/3 of both houses of Congress propose an amendment, then it goes out to the states for ratification. Just like you described, 38 states have to ratify. Okay. The second way that we've never used says that when 2/3 of the states call for a convention, then they can gather in convention, and the same as Congress, they can propose amendments, and same method for ratification. It goes out to 38 states. It's interesting how and why it got in there. To me, this is one of the things that really got me involved in this is if you go back to 1787, in convention. You know, we all know the stories. The guys were there. It was hot. It was sweaty. They're locked in. Independence all right. They boarded up the doors and windows so nobody would know what was going on. 2 days before the end of convention, Colonel George Mason from Virginia stands up and says, "We got a big problem. We're done with the document. We're getting ready to go home, but we screwed up because we gave the federal government the power to propose amendments, and we didn't give it to the people acting through the states."
Right.
And then he asked a question which I think is super relevant. He said, "Are we so naive that we believe that a federal government that becomes a tyranny will propose amendments to rein in its own tyranny?" You know, Chris, I think they laughed, probably. We don't have videotape, but I wish we did. Here's why I think they laughed, because we have Madison's notes. And Madison's notes say 2 Latin words, abbreviations, nin com, which means no comment. There's no debate. So this is amazing. They debated everything. On this one, it was kind of a forehead slap. Oh, yeah, George has it right. And we know that they unanimously adopted the second clause of Article 5 to give you and me, our state legislatures, the power to rein in the federal government by calling a convention. So that's how it gets in there. The process, as you described it, is correct. It takes 34 state legislatures to call the convention. The things that are being considered under the convention language we're proposing, term limits for all federal officials, by the way, not just Congress, but the judiciary, bureaucrats, staffers, and deep state.
Would that include like your, well, obviously, I guess the Treasury Secretary?
Absolutely.
It's limited by the president, though.
Well, but I mean, they could only be appointed for a certain term. I think most importantly to me are staffers and bureaucrats who have so much power in Washington, D.C.
The unelected ones.
The unelected ones that we never were supposed to have, right? That's the deep state that you and I talk about and we hear people talk about. So I say, maybe those people can be in D.C. for 10 years and no more. Let's get rid of that culture. And then the last thing is, so you got term limits, you got fiscal restraints, really important, balanced budget amendment, and we're spending our country into oblivion. We could potentially, which I'm in favor of, reimpose the gold standard. We removed the gold standard, broke our currency, turned it into a purely fiat currency. And so we've done a lot of damage to the financial systems. We could potentially, you and I talked about this a little bit off camera, at least audit the Fed, maybe do away with the Fed if we understand what that would do. So these are fiscal things. We could put caps on taxation and spending, maybe tied to GDP or population plus inflation, rational stuff.
Right.
And then the last thing, to me, the most important, is we could put the federal government back in the box by limiting the scope, power, and jurisdiction. Specifically things like saying, no, you can't be involved in education or energy or healthcare, things that the federal government was never intended to be involved in, but the courts have given them the authority to do. We could take that power away. So this is all about taking the power away from the federal government and giving it back to the people.
Would this be what you would consider from a historical standpoint, from a point of view of the anti-federalists, like someone like Thomas Jefferson, where they were wanting to keep the federal government's power very limited?
Yeah, I think we live in a time now, if you read Federalist papers and Anti-Federalist papers, the Anti-Federalists had a better perspective, really, historically, when you know, from their perspective, the federal government was going to become too big, too centralized, too powerful. I think you and I would agree that that's happened.
Right.
So yeah, I think the Anti-Federalists would absolutely be in favor of doing this right now.
How many states do you have right now confirmed to sign on for being a part of the convention?
So it takes 34, as we said. We have 15 states fully on board. Another 8 states have passed it in one chamber. Another, here in North Carolina, we've passed it through the House. That's what I'm here for. We're pending in the Senate right now. We're trying to get it done before close of session this year. So that would be number 16. And then that would leave 7 more states who had it done in one house or another. And again, got to get to the 34. It's a long road.
I was going to say, what happens when some of these officials that are elected are no longer in office? Does that kind of start the process over for each state?
No, the way it works is once they pass the resolution, that's on the books unless they rescind it. They can rescind it through the exact same process.
Okay.
Both houses of the legislature. Important to note the governor has no say over this. In this state, that's probably particularly good. It's true in a lot of states.
Yeah.
We have a good legislature, not necessarily a good governor. Governors tend to like to accrue power to themselves. So, no, we don't need governor, and none of the states lose it just because people cycle through office. It stays permanently until they rescind it, if they choose to rescind it.
Okay, very cool. Now, off camera, Mark did agree to do a follow-up interview where we could spend a lot more time diving into a lot of subjects, because we did record some things at the very beginning. If you are a patron, you'll see that little bit of that conversation on my Patreon channel, so I definitely encourage you to check that out, but we will do a follow-up. Just kind of real quickly, since we're talking about auditing the Fed and you understanding sound money versus currency, and us being on a fiat system, especially since Nixon took us off the gold standard.
Disaster.
What are your feelings on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies? Because you mentioned government spending. The infrastructure bill just got passed through, which none of the amendments for crypto got put in. So the original verbiage is in there, and then also we're talking about $1 trillion budget. So
I don't know how much money that is. Nobody does,
Right.
right? It is fake money. It's funny money. I mean, it has no more value than monopoly money. I think what most people don't understand, when they say they're going to spend $1 trillion, they're going to print a whole bunch of money. And when they print money, this is what blows my mind and frustrates me. When they print money, it's a tax, right? And most people don't understand that.
hidden tax.
Yeah, it's hidden tax. That's what makes it so bad. It's really actually taxation without representation. Because they're not saying to you and me, hey, by the way, we're going to take a lot more of your money. And if they did say that, everybody would say no.
Right.
It would be highly unpopular. So instead, they just print cash, which makes every dollar in your pocket worth less. It's stealing, in my opinion. So, no, I think it's terrible. I think the fact that we have a fiat currency is terrible. I think it allows government to steal our money. I think ultimately that's going to end one way or another. What can't continue forever won't continue forever. I don't know how it ends, but likely it's not pretty. So I think crypto is really important because crypto disconnects our ability to hold value in something that's not controlled by the government, provided the government doesn't do a bunch of crazy stuff like they're threatening to do right now. Governments all around the world don't like crypto because it removes currency from their control.
Right. Well, the interesting thing, and we'll see it play out, is that in a sense, the creation of something like Bitcoin and decentralized cryptocurrencies were because regulations don't work.
Absolutely.
So even if they were to apply regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies, it may not necessarily affect peer-to-peer, we the people. And I'm really trying to manifest this idea, and it coincides with Convention of States. When enough people take a stand, nothing can stand against the people.
Absolutely agree.
So with Convention of States, for anybody who's watching this, so anybody who's disappointed with the state of our nation, with our politicians, our federal government, who want to get involved, what can people do? What would be your call to arms, so to say, to anybody when it comes to Convention of States?
First, I would say, if you're watching this channel and you're not disappointed, you probably should find another channel, right? Because that's crazy. I don't get that. It's a mess. I would say both parties are a mess. I would call myself more conservative, conservatarian, really. But the Republicans are a disaster, and they've been a disaster for most of my lifetime. The Democrats are a disaster. They're just a worse disaster. It's just a mess. So I would say get involved. Convention of States is an effort to take power away from the federal government and bring it back to the people in the states. And I want to give a really important caveat. The states aren't great. It's not like I think that everybody in the Capitol here is great and they're all wonderful people. It's they're closer to you. You can actually drive to the Capitol and sit down with your state legislator. You can chew them out. You can tell them if you think they're doing a good job. Easier to unelect those people also than a congressman or a U.S. senator. So this is human nature. Government closer to us is a better government. I believe in what's called subsidiarity. That's a Catholic term, believe it or not. And they just say that governance closest to the people is the best kind of governance. Right. So, I want the power in the local. I want the family first, the individual, the family, the local community, maybe then up into the state if we have to, and very little at the federal level.
Bottom up.
Bottom up.
Instead of top down.
That's what the founders intended. I think that's how human beings are made. If you ask human beings this question, this is my fundamental question for Convention of States. Do you think people in Washington, D.C. should be able to tell you what to do, or do you think you should decide for yourself?
I like the idea of being self-governing.
Everybody says, I mean, unless you're like some wild-eyed Marxist, everybody says, yeah, I want to run my own affairs, right? And so that's self-governance. That's exactly what Convention of States is about, so people can get involved at conventionofstates.com.
Very cool. Something I did mean to ask you, and we don't have to spend a lot of time, we can dive into this a little bit more, but as the interim CEO of Parler, which was under attack, free speech under attack, and that was a really great example, an unfortunate example of the attacks on free speech. What are your thoughts on everything? Because even my channel, I'm just right now, I got 2 strikes on my YouTube channel.
Yep.
The censorship is getting to be crazy. I've had them delete over 20 videos over the past 3 months.
Yeah.
And so, just quickly, what are your thoughts on what can people do?
Yeah, look, I had that experience last week, literally. I did a Sunday night, I do a Sunday night LBRY on the Convention of States channel. I was out of town, so I recorded in advance. This is even scarier, Chris. I recorded in advance, we uploaded it, and just left it there, and then we were going to activate it on Sunday night when I was gone. They watched it before we played it, literally. And they told us, if you play that, that's a strike against your channel. I mean, it's just, so they're actually, when
you had it scheduled,
yeah.
upload scheduled, so it's still technically unlisted.
Yes, exactly. It was absolutely
it should be out of
unlisted.
the algorithm.
And they told us we would have a strike. So they're watching the stuff that's unlisted, that's now within the algorithm. It was insane. So I think it's horrifying. It's really bad. I think these big tech companies have become part of government. And that's never healthy.
That's fascism, isn't it?
It is absolutely fascism. So anytime you have big government and big companies in bed together, I don't care what party, I don't care what policy, that's bad stuff, and I'm against that. And so we're seeing a new era though. Fascism, Mussolini said fascism was everything in the state, nothing outside the state. And this is the important one for today, nothing against the state. And so if you look back at Mussolini's time or Hitler or Stalin, controlling what people said was hard, right? Because they didn't have digital means of communication.
Right.
Today, we have to. I mean, that's how we communicate. You've got your YouTube channel, I got my Twitter, Facebook, Parler, whatever you want to call it, whatever your channel distribution is. Well, they watch all that stuff now. And this is super dangerous because the tech oligarchs are in bed with government. And they're happy to suppress speech. You know, you and I, think about what Stalin would have thought about the idea that every citizen, think the fantasy, every citizen carrying a tracking device in their pocket. You and I carry a tracking device.
I know we do willingly.
Right, so it's unbelievable. So we live in what I think are pretty terrifying sort of postmodern times. We don't realize it. I think people need to open their eyes because I think it's much further along the course than most people.
Okay. We're at a facility where some people are going to be obviously watching, and we're getting ready to wrap up this interview. But did you have any final thoughts you wanted to add before we?
Yeah, but look, this would be my final thought, and I hate to sound alarmist, but this is what I'm going to talk about tonight. We live in a country that's Marxist. People think we live in a capitalist society, a free market society, a liberty-oriented society. That's not true, right? In my opinion, in this country, I think we're already in a Marxist society. It's American Marxism. So people, if they think, well, I don't see red flags flying and hammers and sickles, I get that, and I understand why you think it's different. But the folks in D.C., they don't care what you think. We have a president who this week said, I understand it's unconstitutional for me to extend the eviction moratorium. I'm going to do it anyway. And he says it with impunity, like the Constitution's irrelevant, because that's what they think in Washington, D.C. The way they spend money. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about rule of law. We see laws being broken with impunity. Nobody's prosecuted, right? And so to me, I think it's important that you understand you live in a country that's already become Marxist, and you have a choice to make. This is my theme every day now. You're going to stand and fight, or you're going to stand down. Those are the only two choices. And so if you're just watching and all you do is watch, then you're standing down. Then you're actually not participating in the fight. So
right.
Whatever you decide to do, whatever your form of rebellion is, the way, if it's just electoral politics, if it's convention of states, if it's being involved in the crypto revolution, whatever it is, you need to make sure you're engaged, because we're going to win or we're going to lose.
Right.
It's not up to you and me. It's up to them. There's a lot more of them than you and me.
I agree. And this is obviously not a call for anything violent.
Absolutely not.
There's a lot of things that people need to do to be proactive that are nonviolent that can make a lot of headway for us to be able to take the power back, so to say. So again, Mark, I really appreciate it. Look forward to your follow-up. Ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed. And as always, I encourage you to be the change by practicing change.